Great. Perfect.
So we are recording. And let me just
Recording in progress.
Great. Okay. We have 13 people in the
Great,
attendance.
fantastic. I'm glad to get started.
Great. Okay. This executive committee meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act to facilitate teleconferencing and to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission at public meetings. Ordinarily, the Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. AB 361 suspends some of those rules during a state of emergency where state and local health officials have recommended social distancing. The Brown Act continues to require that we notice meetings in advance and allow the public to participate. This executive committee meeting has met all the applicable notice requirements, and the public is welcome to participate in this meeting. If you wish to be recognized during public comment, please fill out a public comment speaker form found at ebce.org/meeting and use the raise hand feature in Zoom. You'll be recognized for 3 minutes. Comments can also be submitted online at ebce.org/meetings.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone joining us today. Thank you very much. Today is Friday, December 2nd, 2022 for the Executive Committee meeting. My name is Karina Lopez. I'm the chair of the Executive Committee. We are in hybrid meeting mode, joined by members of the public. Members of the public, I apologize for our tardiness in starting today. We had a closed session, which we just ended on another matter. So we'll go ahead and get started with roll call to establish a quorum, and then we'll move on to our second second item for today, which is public comment, which will be 2 minutes, not 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy? Tracy?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Oakland?
Here.
Emeryville?
Here.
Fremont? San Leandro?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So we'll go into our public comment period, and this item is reserved for persons wishing to address the executive committee on any EBC related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. So anything that's not on for today, you have the ability to publicly comment now for 2 minutes. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time that the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes. In this case today, we will, since we have a number of people participating, we will be limiting it to 2 minutes per speaker. You must complete an electronic speaker card or raise your virtual hand. The chair may increase or decrease the allotted time depending on how the meeting goes. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 3, and that's the approval of the minutes from the October 28, 2022 meeting.
Oh, excuse me, Madam Chair, was there any public?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Did we have any public comment? We just discussed it. I didn't see any
Yes.
hands. Oh, we do.
Yes, we do.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Recognize Cynthia Landry. Cynthia Landry, recognized for 2 minutes.
Need to get the view. Can we get the view so I can see? Let's do we have a view of how many who's in the virtual room and their hands raised. Okay,
Well,
I need that. Yes, I can see. I know that there's.
Cynthia Landry, recognized for 2 minutes.
Yes, I think the item, thank you for the accommodation. I think the item that I want to speak on is in the agenda today, so I will wait for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Just a reminder, please lower your hand and re-raise your hand if you would like to speak on a non-agendized item for today.
If I
We
can
have
go
gotten
right-
a late start.
Okay.
I can't see whose hands raised on my end, so
Ready to get
Hope
started.
it's-
well,
Margie Lewis. Margie Lewis, you are recognized to speak for 2 minutes.
Yes, I want to comment on item number 4 on the agenda. The Community Advisory Committee was designed to have community input.
excuse me, that we'll get to item 4 at the appropriate time. You can do public comment for 2 minutes. I'll restate that currently right now we are on agenda item 2. Only people who are commenting on non-agenda items can have 2 minutes to speak. Please lower all your virtual hands and re-raise them if you would like to have a comment on non-agendized items. Are there any hands raised?
There are no hands raised for public comment at this
I
time.
want to comment on item number 4. The Community Advisory Committee.
Excuse me, we're not on item 4 currently. You're out of order. You are out of order.
Community energy. The staff has grown from 18 to now over 50. We need to value the voice and input of the community that have made EBC.
Ms. Lewis, we will come to your comment at item 4. We are almost there. We just need to approve the minutes. Thank you. We're on item, I can't see whether we have any hands raised. So do we have any hands raised in the virtual room?
We have no hands raised.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the approval of the minutes. Are there any amendments or changes to the minutes by many members of the executive committee?
I want to comment on item number.
Ms. Lewis, you are out of order.
What?
You will have the floor, and the next agenda item, we have to vote on the approval of the minutes.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're just gonna. So who's promoted here? So just a difference. Right.
Would any member of the executive board currently like to amend or change the minutes of October 28th? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much. I'll take a motion for the approval of the minutes for October 28th, 2022.
I will move the minutes.
Thank you. Do I have
Seconded.
a second? Thank you. We have a first and a second, by Member Martinez, and second by Member Ariola for the approval of minutes. Can we please take a roll call vote?
Great, thank you. Tracy,
Yes.
Oakland,
Aye.
Emeryville,
Aye.
Fremont, and Leandro.
Aye.
Minutes were approved.
Thank you. Now we are on item 4, which is, I believe, why most people are here today. This is an informational item. That means that we will not be voting on this item. It's purely informational. However, the executive board could decide to give direction to staff. So this is the Community Advisory Committee request policy. This is a discussion on the agenda setting process and community representation. I'm going to go ahead and give it over to staff, and also I've asked our our attorney, our counsel, to provide some parameters. Is Inder on? I can't see her.
Yes.
She is on.
Okay. In advance of any discussion or comment.
Okay, well, I think the way this item was structured was actually to facilitate some feedback from the board. That was the request that was made at our, I believe it was our October board meeting, to bring it to the executive committee for discussion on policies and parameters for how staff shall be responsive to CAC requests, generally speaking, that are not related to items that are on the board agenda. So there was some discussion, but again, there was a direction by the board that the executive committee would provide feedback and some direction there. I'll note that in response to that, staff has been working on some ideas for what a process would look like, and developed kind of in an effort to sort of memorialize some of those recommendations. Staff did put together a proposal. After some management review, though, the decision I made was that we would benefit from a discussion without a sort of set proposal from staff. We benefit from a discussion from the board, and so let's really take feedback from the exec com and the board before developing a proposal. In our sort of effort to get our documents ready for this agenda, that staff proposal was mistakenly posted and was subsequently removed. So some folks may have seen a staff proposal that is not an operative proposal at this time, but our view does reflect, what a process could look like for providing transparent requests to the board for allocation of staff time. So
Thank
with
you.
that, I want to pass it to you. I don't have anything else to say.
I appreciate that. I think I do appreciate the fact that you are looking to have this be board driven and executive committee driven. That's the correct order of operations for this initial conversation, which could have some longevity. So we'll go ahead and I'll move this over here. If you would like to have any comments or if you have anything to share in terms of any policies or processes or procedures that have already been established so we know what we're working with.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair and members of the Executive Committee. This is Ender Counsel. I'm the General Counsel. So briefly, I was just going to touch on what is provided in our Joint Powers Agreement, which actually provided for the creation of the CAC by the board, and the CAC will be operated pursuant to any rules of order and procedure adopted by the board. The board has adopted a working plan for the CAC. The Joint Powers Agreement states that the chair of the CAC will serve as an ex officio non-voting member of the board, and traditionally under Robert's rules or rules of parliamentary procedure, a non-voting member usually cannot make a motion or a second. So finally, the JPA just states that the CAC ex officio member will not participate as a member of the executive committee and will not attend closed sessions of the board. So those are the parameters that are laid out in our joint powers agreement, which cannot be changed without amending the agreement. So as a starting point, I thought it might be helpful just to point out those parameters. And then, from that point on, it's really up to the board. Beyond those items I just mentioned, it's really up to the board to define the role of the CAC and your ex officio board member, of course.
Thank you so much. We may be coming back to you to further clarify as we have this conversation. Member Kalb, do you have any clarifying questions? So we will do clarifying questions and we'll move on to public comment, and then we'll have discussion by the executive committee. Do you have any clarifying questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I need a summary of why we're discussing this. That the implication is there's a problem or a challenge or a discrepancy or something that needs to be addressed, and I'm unclear what that something is. So if someone on staff could lay out at least the staff's perspective on what the something is, then I could more engage in this discussion. But I feel like I'm not there yet.
I'm happy to respond, Dan. So I believe it was at the October board meeting. I think Olivia had raised a concern that you had heard, and your colleagues at the CAC had, about the lack of responsiveness of staff to some requests that had been made. Yeah.
I was actually thanking staff
Okay.
for putting together a table that showed number of union hours worked a year and a half after the request was made, which I did not say during the meeting, but that is how long it took for that first thing to come in. And what I said was, thank you so much. I know you are busy, and we really appreciate getting this because we can do good things with this in the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
I will recognize you when I would like for you to speak, okay? And then go ahead.
So I think that there was some discussion about sort of staff requests, and then I think that turned into a conversation amongst the board about generally like how staff and the CAC are interacting, and the timeliness of requests and the kinds of requests that should be made. And so there was not a specific staff. It was not a specific staff generated request one way or the other. And I don't think it was a staff CAC read. It was really just, there was some comments made, and then from there were some follow-up questions from the board about, well, what are the kinds of requests that are being made? And from there was some discussion. I was like, let's review the process for how and when the CAC is asking staff for information, particularly information that is not related to a topic that's on the agenda. So, I guess the only other point I will make is, I think there are a number of occasions, and so it did come up, I believe, at that meeting as well. There was a request made to staff about some progress related to the call center and staffing for the call center. And so I think that was another example of the board does not actually ask staff to provide an update on the call center. It had come from the CAC. And so there was a question, I think, about, well, we're working on the board agenda items. Is it really sort of topical to be bringing up the call center? So there was, I believe, at that meeting, some discussion of what was going on with the call center. Again, I think some of the feedback the board provided was, well, it's not a topic that we're asking about at this time. So staff, why are you spending time on something that we, the board, have not asked you to cover? Oh, Dan, you're
muted.
Sorry, I think that clarifies, I think, the discussion, and I'll wait till we get to the discussion phase before I make more comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, are there any other further clarifying questions today by any other members of the executive committee? Okay, so there are no further raised hands and no questions within the room. So we will move on to public comment, and we are going to be doing 2 minutes per person. At the end of your 2 minutes, I will be asking the clerk to cut off. So please do be sure to be able to have your comments, and especially what you feel is most germane, really in the beginning of your public comments, so we can capture your sentiment. Thank you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. See 2 hands raised, and I have 1 written comment that I'll read into the record. Jim Lutz, recognized for 2 minutes.
Yeah, Jim Lutz. I'm actually a member of the CAC, and I wanted to point out that it's important for the CAC to be able to raise issues for the board to consider that the staff may not wish to discuss or may not consider as important to discuss. So it's the reason you have a community advisory committee is to get input from outside the staff and outside the board to bring up issues that may be important. So any restrictions on that need to be carefully thought out and not prevent unpleasant topics the staff may consider unnecessary from being excluded. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Stebbins, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
wait, this is Barbara. I'm going to go, Margie.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Barbara.
Okay, Barbara Stebbins with local.
Only 1%. I think just in general, we should.
Is somebody talking over me? Can we reset the time, please?
Yeah, the clock will be reset to 2 minutes. We're having I apologize. We're having a technical difficulty because we have a couple of people speaking at once, including someone who was not recognized. So I will, as the chair of today's meeting, I'll be recognizing who has the floor and who does not have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Recognized for 2 minutes.
Barbara Stebbins.
I recognize Barbara Stebbins as having the floor.
Okay, so Barbara Stebbins with Local Clean Energy Alliance, and East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I'll start with the fact that the community is in the title of this agency, which is quite fitting since East Bay Community Energy owes its very existence to the advocacy by community organizations and individuals within the community. Particularly, East Bay Clean Power Alliance had a fundamental role in the creation of this agency. In recognition of that, EBCE includes a community advisory committee in the structure of the agency, whose role is to advise the board of directors on all subjects related to the operation of the CCA program. If the CAC is lacking information because their access to staff is hindered or limited in any way, the CAC would not be able to perform their chief duty. Beyond those facts is the fact that both EBCE staff and the board of directors work for the community. It is the community that pays the staff and elects the officials that sit on the board. Any attempt to limit the role of the CAC and/or the community at large will also result in doing serious harm to the transparency of this agency, an issue that is already in play as a recent request for information might indicate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Person I'll rec-
Cynthia Landry.
The next person recognized by the chair is Cynthia Landry for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I have been a proud member of the CAC for several years now. I appreciate very much the time and the dedication that the staff has put in assisting us in vetting and reviewing various actions. And what I want to say is I was one of the members, I don't think I was the only member, that asked for an update on the in-house call center. And why I did that is because previously we had made a commitment to move from a SMUD call center into moving that in-house. I believe Mr. Cal will recall that, and I know that we are probably again or will be again reviewing the SMUD contract, and I wanted to know where we were on that because we did make a commitment, and again, I do appreciate the staff's time, but we do also need to track, the various commitments that we have made or the board has made, and to prioritize things would be very cumbersome. And so again, I want to thank the staff for their time, but we do have to research areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Margie Lewis.
The chair recognizes Margie Lewis for 2 minutes.
Are you able to hear me?
The clock has started, Ms. Lewis, go ahead.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Can you start at the beginning of the clock then? Change the clock to 2 minutes, please, so I can start. Hello, can you please change the clock so I can start? Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, please, we appreciate your patience.
Thank you. Okay. I want to say first, what I want to speak about is there shouldn't be hindrances to access to the staff from the CAC, even for current non-agendized items, as the request could be related to future agenda items. The Community Advisory Committee was designed to have community input in the design and implementation of East Bay Community Energy, and the staff has grown from 18 to now over 50 in order to actualize the work. So we need to value the voice and input of the communities. Our goals are to do more than PG&E, not only access clean energy, but build clean energy resilience in the communities that need it the most. In order for us to achieve our goals, we must make room for members of the CAC and the public to inform EBCE programs and projects. This is dependent on clear, timely, and transparent communications. The role of EBCE staff is to implement the ideas of the community and the city representatives on the EBCE board. So please, we really do not want or need limits. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have one comment to read into the record.
So the clerk will be reading a written comment for the record. Go ahead. And then you can put the time.
This comment is from Audrey Ichinose. Reads, thank you for taking this comment. I am unable to give it in person. My comment concerns item number 4, Community Advisory Committee Request Policy. The document under consideration did not appear when I tried to call it up this morning. I based my comment on the reading of the document that was listed in an earlier announcement of this meeting. It is not clear what occasioned this elaborate proposal, but 2 things are clear. An overly bureaucratic process such as that outlined in the document seems on the face of it self-defeating in terms of saving face for everyone, staff, board, and CAC members. More importantly, it would set up unnecessarily antagonistic relationships among all of us who are committed to EBCE's goals. Let's not forget that those goals are to fight climate change and to bring all of the social and economic benefits of clean energy to Alameda County. To do this, we have to find ways to work together. Thank you for taking this comment.
Great. I'd like to recognize Linda.
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
I don't know if I can do this entirely in 2 minutes as a director. I was hoping to have a conversation.
Nope, you have 2 minutes. You're a
Okay.
member of the public today, not a member of the executive committee. So
Absolutely not executive. So I came to talk about the process that the CAC currently uses to bring information to the board and kind of our origins. So when things come up in public comment, especially if it's repeated, then in the chair report, I tell the board, these are things that have come up. The clerk helps us keep a running list of all the things that have come up. And when something aligns with the board item, we tend to bring those things forward. If something that is not with a board item comes up, but it comes up repeatedly, I let the board know. And on anniversaries of commitments that are in our docs, like something that's in the local development business plan, or the anniversary of we're going to be looking at the call center, it's been a year, or something like that, we'll mention that again. When we started, we did have a much smaller staff, and I was the original chair of the CAC, and I used to meet every month with the chair of the board to go over what some of those comments were, and to help outline the priorities. Nick was part of those meetings often, and it was really collaborative. The CAC has helped staff identify problems in the community when they arose from the community before it was brought from the board. When we see things on social media, when a constituent group is raising some concerns that we feel could be a threat to the CCA. And I do feel like some of that communication has been lost. There's a 2-year gap between when I was chair and now. And it would be great to increase communication between the board and the staff and the CAC. I really do want to say that I at least feel that in my time, we haven't put a lot of demands on time of staff, that we do bring things up and ask questions. When can we expect to receive something? But when the answer is we can't, then that's just the answer. So
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, well, go ahead, and I have a raised hand by member Cal. Go ahead, we're in discussion. And again, this is an informational item. We're just providing some structure around this conversation. I believe I was the person that referred this as an agenda item so that we could have this discussion in October. So here we are. Member Calc, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not see the draft staff proposal that was temporarily posted, so I don't have anything. I'm not commenting on whatever that is because I don't know what that was. I do believe that our Community Advisory Committee, which is an official body that we created, that the JPA created, should be able to make inquiries, obviously about energy, about the topic of what we're all about, to the staff through whatever process the executive director sets up for that communication, and request some information, even if that information is not going to be on the next couple board meeting agendas, if it's still relevant to our mission and EBCE. Now, obviously, if it's not the of a time sensitive nature, then it could take a longer period of time to fulfill that request. But I think the committee, again, when I say the committee, I mean the committee as a committee, not one member here, one member there. The committee should vote to make a request, not just, oh, I want this one, I want that. But if the committee votes to make a request to get information about X and Y, I think if it's relevant to EBCE, I think that should be followed up on. Again, the timeline, I can't speak to the timeline, but I do believe staff should see those requests as one of the things that is part of the job, even if it's not the most urgent or time sensitive thing. So I don't want the CEC members to feel that the staff inadvertently or unintentionally are being dismissive of these requests. And I have no idea the volume of these requests, how often this happens, or if it's only once in a while. Theoretically, you could have, I don't think this is happening, but theoretically you could have like a ridiculous number of requests, and that's just not real. Like that just can't happen. But if it's just an occasional request to get some information, I think that's reasonable. And the staff would need to share, oh, well, that's going to be a 2-page memo. Oh, that's going to be a 20-page report. That's going to determine how long it's going to take and how doable it is in whatever period of time. But I think it's fine for our Community Advisory Committee to make such requests as long as they're relevant to EBCE.
Can you recognize Annie?
Yes. Annie, you're recognized. She speaks.
Apologies, I was finding my unmute button. Good afternoon, everyone. I was the ghostwriter of this policy that was posted as an initial draft. And so I wanted to just quickly respond and clarify that we are not looking to stop the CAC from making requests. We're looking for the board to give us direction on how to prioritize. There aren't necessarily, there isn't a deluge of requests or over time, lots of requests, but there can be, I would say maybe spikes in that. And the staff that works directly with the CAC is also doing a number of other things. We referenced that we have 50+ employees. All 50+ employees are not dedicated to supporting the CAC. It's really 1 to 2 people. And so we're not looking to shut down the questions. We're just looking for board guidance on how to best address them and prioritize. Thank you.
I think the only other comment maybe worth making is, we go into every CAC meeting ready to present on the agenda that we've put together for that board meeting, and there's significant content to cover, and we spend a lot of time covering that. And so I will say some of the requests that we have received, whether they relate to call center or labor hours, or to present items related to, say, our power content, these are items that we will take those requests and say, well, we're focusing on these things, and and the requests that focused on from the board agenda and the board agenda, and we may be presenting that item in the future. And so doing a standalone presentation to the CAC when it's not related to the board agenda, there's a timely, how timely can we be? Is this information that we feel ready to present? And so I think what the proposal that Annie has put together really reflects is we'd like, if there is a request that's not related to the agenda, we'd really like the board to review that, or the exec com to review that and provide feedback, so that if it's something, again, that is not agenda related, and it's, if it's just sort of a, it's a small request, it's just, there's a quick question you can answer, well, then of course we should do that. But these are often, the ones we're referring to are often like, we want some more thorough analysis. Frankly, like I'd like to understand if the board is prioritizing that analysis or not. Because if the board says that's analysis that we don't really think we're ready to share or present, then I would tend to say that that's the direction that we're going to want to take.
I think I'm just going to get back and make sure that we don't have any of the other committee members, and then I'll come back to you, Nick, on any discussion thus far. Is there anybody has a raised hand virtually, and be ready with that? So I will recognize Member Martinez next.
Thank you. So I'll just reiterate something I've said in the past, and that Member Kalb has touched on in this meeting, that no single member of the board of directors can give direction to staff, and that includes asking them to produce information, even if it's related to the mission of East Bay Community Energy. We do that as a body. So I think, like I agree with Dan's sentiment that we don't want to stifle any inquiries, but I think we should proactively create a process that will establish a way to prioritize how these requests can be handled by staff. And again, like Member Kalb, I haven't seen a draft proposal, but I think that it would be wise to work with staff, because they're the ones who understand what their workflow is and how they would be able to tackle these issues. So I do have a recommendation to make. I'd love to hear from the chair of this committee as well before I make that recommendation. But it's, again, it's just basic rules of governance that me, even as chair of the committee, I cannot make requests of staff to do anything. That is something that I rely on my colleagues to join with me as a body to create, these asks of staff. So I will give it back to the chair, and love to hear your comments as well.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the executive committee that will have their hands raised before I speak?
Yes, Councilmember Ariola has his hand.
Member Ariola, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to say very briefly that I absolutely concur with the comments made by the other committee members. And I just want to reiterate, as our future chair, that, I am committed to continuing to work with the chair of CSC to make sure that, I hear and understand that there's been a strong collaboration in the past. And I look forward to continuing that collaboration in the future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just reflecting on the public comments and the comments by my colleagues and by staff, what I see are two things. The first thing is that there's the matter of workflow and how workflow should stem. And that has to do with process, prioritization, and feedback for workflow. As Chair of the Board Martinez has indicated, no single board member can provide that direction. We must do that via direction reached by consensus or by vote. So again, this whole process is collaborative, and we must agree as a body before we give staff a workload. I also see that there is, based on the comments, there's desire to maintain and or increase communication. I always feel that that is important to have It creates the ability for people to understand each other better, understand each other's motivations for saying things. And that does require sometimes the conversations being in less formal meetings than an open session. And I appreciate the incoming chair, Ariola, has indicated a commitment for that increased communication. I may be getting ahead of Member Martinez, and I beg your pardon, but I would like to, and I have articulated already this in open session, that what I would like to see is the Community Advisory Committee, if there is a significant request for workflow, to make that request to the chair of the executive committee. Then that becomes either agendized or through the item, what would be today 5, which would be request to place an item on a future board agenda. So then that item can be considered, voted upon by the executive committee to put that on for a future workflow for staff. I think that's so we all understand who's working on what and what the motivation is, and that there's been some vetting and discussion in advance of it coming. I do think it is inappropriate for the Community Advisory Committee to go directly to staff and ask for workflow. No board member can do that. Neither the chair of the executive committee nor the chair of the board can do that singularly. And we are elected to this body. I think it's inappropriate for the Community Advisory Committee to do that directly. That is the elephant in the room, and I'm bringing that out into light. I think it would be more appropriate for the there to be those meetings and ask, the future chair to bring something to the fore, and if the votes are there, the board can give direction to staff on behalf of the Community Advisory Committee to move forward with resources. And in some cases, those resources may be outside of what we have, and so that could require maybe going to contract with the consultants or something. But I do like the idea of there being shared information, and we are all very dedicated to the mission of East Bay Community Energy, and we all have that in mind. And that's what motivates us. We think we're creating a better world. It's just a matter of how the process, it's not that the process won't happen or that it's stifled. I think there was that implication made there in public comment. I don't think that's the motivation here. I think it's more of just understanding how the workflow happens and through what mechanism. And I do think it should come through the executive committee. Thank you. Chair Martinez.
Oh, I think Member Cal.
Member Cal, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to think this through, and having talked to people on different community advisory committees and different agencies and such, and over the years, the fact that the community advisory, for instance, the community advisory committee might, as a whole, might be interested in obtaining some information or getting some new analysis of something that relates to EBCE, even if that topic, that specific topic, isn't on the next or the one after that, isn't likely to be on the next or the very next after that full board meeting agenda, doesn't mean, it feels like it could still be a very valid thing for the CAC to want to raise, and we shouldn't have to say, well, we're going to have to put it on the board agenda for them to be able to get information about it. The fact that there could be the situations where they wanted some information about something relevant, and then when they get that information, that could actually end up highlighting something that says, oh, whoa, there's some information here. Maybe it needs to be agendized for the full board, and we didn't really know about it yet. So again, to me, it's more of a question of volume. If these larger requests come too frequently, then we need to filter them. We, the executive committee, need to filter them. But I'm unclear where we've reached that point. I don't have a sense that we have. I could be wrong. And so I don't feel, I'm not sure, but I think it's a good idea for the CAC to have regular communications with the board chair, and in these situations to be talking with the executive committee chair. I don't think the executive committee should have to vote to approve the CAC's request. I don't sense we've gotten to that level of it being a problem, and I'm not comfortable doing that at this point. But those are my views. Again, maybe it could be a problem in the future, but I don't feel like.
Okay, before we move forward, I'm going to have staff respond to your comment, and then I'm going to continue on with what my colleagues have. And then I'm going to ask, and I'm just giving a little bit extra time to our attorney for indirect to tell me from a parliamentary procedure what I can do about recognizing someone who would like to speak, but has already expended the 2 minutes and is not a member of the committee, what the process is, and just so I'm on point legally from a parliamentary procedure. So if you can just research that while I'm buying a little bit of time here, just so you can do that and tell me. But I'll have you answer that question after they've spoken. Thank you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So
I'd be happy to weigh in whenever.
okay, let me. I think, Dan, part of the challenge, perhaps, that staff is sort of trying to grapple with is the definition of timely, right? To say that we might say, well, this is something we'll deal with in a couple months because we're working on other things right now. And the CAC may say, no, we want you to come back next meeting and be able to prepare that. And so what I would say is, if at a board meeting, if the board says, staff, you shall put this item on next month's agenda, then that is a decree. We shall be ready to present on an item in the next month. I don't know that we staff want to be in a position to be the arbiters of what timely is or not. So a request is made. It's a request that is not related to the agenda. Eventually, when we have the opportunity to get to it, we'll get to it. If it's not something that's on the agenda and it's not something that our workflow that we're already doing, but that has been, I will say, a point of contention that's certainly been reported to me, that on a handful of occasions there's been, why aren't you getting this information to us more quickly? One example I'll point to is, at many of our board meetings and at our CAC meetings, there's been requests around our power content label. Our view is that we have been responsive. We have presented on more than one occasion to the board our response to those questions. But at the CAC, we've had sort of comments made to us saying, well, no, you're not being responsive to the questions. And our response is, no, we are being responsive. And so, again, I don't want to be the arbiter of whether we are responsive or not. I think that's really, from my perspective, that is really the board's responsibility to tell us, yes, this is something you should present in the near term, or, hey, when it's timely, when the staff has sort of done the analysis as part of its due course of business, that would be a good time to do it.
Okay, and then
I just have a recommendation. I think that we don't have all of the information that we could have at our disposal right now, and I think it might be wise to have the chair appoint an ad hoc committee that can kind of go over what a potential process would be that would incorporate everything that our members of this committee are asking for. Also would take into account any recommendations from staff. I understand there was a draft proposal. So obviously they've been thinking about different ways that this process could work, and take into account the issues brought forward by the CAC in how they would like items to be addressed, and kind of help them understand, what their best workflow is. So in that sense, it might be good to think about their work plan as well in that same context. So my recommendation would be to have this body, the executive committee, recommend to the board that the chair assign an ad hoc committee of 2 members to work with staff to have a proposal of, holistically, what could, to review the work plan and to establish a process by which to prioritize requests made from staff. I think that people really sit down, they can hammer out a really good proposal for how this can work. And I think we've, between this meeting and the full board getting that proposal, will have adequate and ample time for people to give comment to that. I think we'll hear a lot of the same things that we've heard at our October meeting, at our meeting today. But I think what we'll end up with is a good process that will be clear for everyone. I agree with our chair of this committee that there's no wish to stifle any inquiries, but simply to give direction to staff so that they're clear on what their parameters are, and that they don't need to make those calls as to the weight of a request. I have heard from staff that we have volume and capacity issues, and I want to honor that that there's some stress around that issue. And then there was another member of the board who highlighted this in October, and I just want to make sure that his concerns were heard as well. So that would be my recommendation, that we form an ad hoc committee, and that a full proposal come back to the whole board.
Thank you. Any other member of the executive committee has raised hand?
There are no members of the executive committee.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Inder as our counsel, and then parliament, de facto parliamentarian. Can you let me know how I can go ahead or what my ability is to recognize? Someone has one comment already.
Yeah, happy to.
Not a member.
So I've always thought and considered it to be the prerogative of the chair to invite anyone to speak. Usually that would be in the form of a question answer session. So you would ask questions of the member of the public and they would be allowed to respond. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and do that today then. Thank you for being here in person and for chairing and taking the time. I know it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate how thorough the advisory committee has been thoughtful. I'll recognize you to be able to, provide your thoughts. I ask that you keep in mind that brevity is important. And so if you can be concise and maybe help us in maybe a bullet point form what your thoughts are, as opposed to in a linear form, as you did in your public comment. That way we make sure we get the corpus or the main idea of what you're looking to do based on some of the feedback. Again, we're all on the same page here. It's just more about how we go about this, and how it's done in such a way that really compartmentalizes staff from having to make political calls per se, or having to have discretion, and really take that out of the process, so that they're not feeling unburdened, or they're not burdened by requests. So go ahead. No, I'm just going to give her the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I am also on the same page with this. This is great. And I have things in bullet points, so I can do it that way. The big things that I'm taking out of this is the group direction, not singular, which I absolutely agree with. And talking with the exec chair and the chair of the board to help set priorities. And those are fantastic bits of feedback. And wonderful and easy to implement. I also love the idea of an ad hoc committee and would like to participate to be able to talk with staff and the board representatives on a process, so that we can have some of those informal discussions around some of the concerns I'm trying to balance. And definitely want to address some of the things that have come up, because our current process is Adrian keeps a list. I check in with Adrian about that list and see if something has already been addressed. We do not ask that it is agendized. If it is from an individual and not representative of a large community request, then it is also not agendized, especially if it is untimely. And some of the concerns that have been brought up have come from the for individuals as opposed to what felt like a consensus of the body. And I definitely would like the opportunity, because I also have been working on a proposal. So, and I did see the proposal that Annie made, and it's got some good starts to it. So I would like to participate in that. That's all.
So you say you have a list and you have a proposal. You have a list that you're giving directly to the clerk?
No, the clerk keeps track of requests that are made, that are just brought up.
By whom?
By the public. He just keeps track of them,
Okay.
and then we review them to see if any of them are appropriate to move to the agenda.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so we don't lose what the public has stated. But those things do not, if they're mentioned during the agenda item of requests for things to be put on future agendas, while it is often stated, I want this on next meeting, that is not how that process goes. So we just review it together and see if there is capacity, or if it's timely or appropriate, or if it's already been addressed.
And why are you doing that with the clerk and not the head of the organization?
You mean instead of the chair?
Yeah.
Oh, because he'll check with staff, like on metrics. Something that was brought up was we'll get updates like, we don't have capacity to do this. There's not time. We thought we were ready to do this. That was something that JP brought to us, that we'll be able to do it. But then it turned out more things came up and they didn't have to do it. So
I think there was
let's just simplify.
Yeah, I think there was a discussion by the incoming chair to have more communication. I think that would be the appropriate place to go, is to the chair in the future, as opposed to the clerk.
Perfect.
Because what we're talking about is taking this out of staff and we're having, is this something the board wants to do? And I think that's more appropriate. I think that's where the friction is right now, is where does the information go and to whom, and who makes the call? And, and it puts staff in a very uncomfortable position, because it's hard to say no to the public. And so the board has to decide, okay, well, what are the priorities? In the city of San Leandro, we currently have over 100 priorities, but we have to whittle them down to 12 per annum. And we don't put that on staff to decide what those 12 are. It's the council, and we vote on it in open session, and we go to the public and we say, this is why. And I think that's what's happening here. It's just a matter of what are the priorities, and that they should be coming through a public process and through the public officials and so forth. So I would invite you to, instead of going to the clerk and going to staff directly, that you feel open enough to just come to the actually elected body of the board.
I love that.
Instead.
That's how we used to do it.
Yeah, and I think that might help a lot, and I think it's already been articulated then. I don't see any other, are there any other? Well, I think what we're going to go ahead and do, Nick, do you have any other further comments about, do you have the ability to do an ad hoc? Do we,
Yeah, I think we certainly, doing an ad hoc, it's certainly doable. I would say I would probably touch base with the chair, subsequent to this meeting with Chair Ariola to discuss the ad hoc committee. So
okay, so we're going to go ahead and again, this is an informational item. We're going to go ahead and take the comments of the present members of this executive committee under advisement. That will be put forward to the future chair of this organization, Member Ariola, who's also on the executive committee, to provide structure around a potential ad hoc committee, and to have further discussion about workflow, prioritization, and increased communication. I would also request a code of conduct. I'm finding that in hybrid formats, sometimes things get lost, and that a lot of our organizations have provided a code of conduct. So code of conduct may also be something that the future ad hoc committee would want to look at, because it's something that I think a lot of councils are looking at, making sure. I know our city council has a council handbook, which is our code of conduct. These are sort of the parameters of how we can do things or not do things and so forth. That'll be good for just general good governance going forward. So anyway, okay, so then that's the recommendation then as we move forward. Because I've heard 3 members say that we're moving forward with an ad hoc committee. And we'll be pushing to future agenda item for the executive committee when the new executive committee begins to meet next year. Hopefully there'll be some conversations with yourself and the future chair about visioning and so forth in advance of that, so that hopefully a lot of there can be some consensus building. Once that happens, then what I would presume is once direction is given, then staff can come back with a presentation. I want to make sure this is very collaborative before anything is sort of put forward. But that ad hoc committee will contain some of the information that Andy had already been thinking about in terms of more structure. As this organization continues to mature and grow from its smaller number to its bigger number, and it will continue to grow, I think these are very natural conversations to have around governance. And as the years go on, this will be time well invested in our organization to make sure that we, in the future, have a clear understanding of how to best go about achieving our mission. All right, and so with that, I think we're completed with this item. So we're on item number 5, which is the committee member and staff announcements. Requesting items to place items on future board agendas. Are there any members of this committee that would like to place or refer for a future agenda item? Do we have any hands raised?
There are no hands raised.
No hands are raised. Any comments by staff?
Well, I just want to, as a comment by staff, want to thank our outgoing chair and vice chair of our executive committee as our last meeting for both of you. Karina, you obviously will have one more meeting as chair of the full board.
I'm gonna hang on as much as I can. You're gonna have to take me out dragging and
well, it's been a wonderful experience working with you both in this capacity and more generally. So we will, I expect in January have at our January board meeting an opportunity to recognize our outgoing board and also welcome our new board members as well. So more details there will be to follow.
Thank you. And member Calp, do you have any comments?
Yes, I certainly want to concur, and Karina and Diane, I'm going to miss you tremendously on this body, and you guys have been great, and I want to thank you for all your work. We already gave a lot of accolades to Diane at the last meeting, and we will do so again, well deserved. But I just wanted to reiterate that. I guess Councilmember Chair Ariola, I guess you're gonna have to kind of reappoint an executive committee early in January, so we have a full 5-member executive committee. So I guess Dan will be doing that. And then I did want to go back to the items on the agenda item, future agenda item. Nick, I know we have the NEM 3 coming up here. Are you going to be able to give a briefing on that, or somebody
at our board meeting?
At the board meeting, okay.
Yeah.
Because I know many people are interested, and it's good to get your EBCE's thoughts about what the latest version is.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's been an honor to serve as the chair of the executive committee. I've enjoyed it. This is one of the best things for me being on the San Leandro City Council, is being to represent the city of San Leandro to this body. This body has been an amazing body in terms of its accomplishments. Thank you very much, Nick, for your leadership. I really admire your work. Thank you very much, Chair Martinez, for your leadership. Thank you very much, former Chair Cal, for your leadership as well. So I feel that I have had great mentors and great partners along the way. Thank you very much, the public, for caring and being involved. And so we will be adjourning to Friday, January 27th, 2023 at noon. Today is December 2nd, and we adjourn at approximately 1:25 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.
Well done, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Dr.
Hey.